Hi everyone, it's Marianna Swallow here with some more Speak Easy tips for you. And today I have to give a tip of my hat to resume and interview coach Cam Axelrod, who asked me for tips on presenting when you are part of a fireside chat conversation. And I'm really glad that Cam reminded me of this because I actually coach clients on this all the time. Whether you are the person who is asked to moderate or be the interviewer during a fireside chat, or whether you're the guest, you want to follow some best practices, and these best practices aren't always very obvious, or what I find is lots of times nobody tells my clients this, so I'm here to tell you. So let's first start with if you are the moderator or the interview. Number one, keep your tone conversational, and this is easier said than done. What I find with a lot of my clients is when they are asked to moderate a fireside chat, they will write out all their questions. And writing out the questions is a good idea and it's a good practice, but where that kind of misses the mark in a live presentation format is that when we ask the questions as they're written, what's happening is they come out very formal and very stodgy. And a couple of weeks ago, I helped a client with this where I read her questions back to her and she said, oh my gosh. So write out your questions, but then after you write them, say them out loud a few times, and then try saying them as you would say them as if you were in an everyday conversation having a cup of coffee with someone. When you are assigned your guests or you find out who you'll be interviewing, get in touch with them at a bare minimum to establish the relationship ahead of time. And I also advise you to either share the questions or give them a sense of what you'll be asking. Personally, I prefer to give my guests a sense of what I'll be asking them because it keeps the conversation a little more spontaneous and it sounds like a real life conversation. However, I've had clients who email the questions to the guest ahead of time and the guest responds with their responses in email. That has a benefit too in that you kind of know what's coming and you can always shape or tweak what you're doing. But either way, make sure you share something ahead of time with your guest so they know what's coming and they're not coming in cold. You know, no one wants to be grappling for words in that situation, especially in front of a live audience. Number three, be prepared to flex in the moment. And if you're not sure how to flex in the moment, I invite you to take one of my pivoting courses, also known as thinking on your feet or being on your toes. You never know if you're going to get a surprise answer from your guest, or maybe there's a question from the audience that kind of comes out of left field, but be prepared to flex and adapt in the moment. As far as preparation goes, tip number 4, don't prepare for every single minute you have. And by that I mean if you are given a 45-minute slot for this fireside chat, or if you are given a 30-minute slot, whatever it is, don't prepare 30 minutes of material. Always leave in buffers because number one, you don't know if the crowd is going to interrupt with a question, or a question goes long, or an answer goes long. Number two, mistakes and delays. Maybe the projector doesn't work or the microphone doesn't work and that delays you a bit. So I like to use like a 2/3 or a 75% formula. If you're given a 30-minute time slot, plan no more than 20 minutes of content, leave room for questions. And that brings me to my next point, number 5. Unless you're told otherwise, like there will be no questions, make sure you build in time for questions from the audience. And then before you wrap up, make sure to thank your guest. All right, those are my tips for the interviewer or the moderator. Let's move on. What if it's flipped around and you're the guest? Well, similar to what you heard me say already about the interviewer, number 1, make sure that you've had time to meet the interviewer ahead of time, even if it's just through email. If you can do a Zoom call or a phone call, even better. If you can meet in person, that's the best. You want to have that established relationship and rapport before you get going. If there's something you explicitly don't want to talk about, make sure that you tell the moderator that and ask them to stay away from the topic. Any good moderator should respect that. And again, ask the moderator or interviewer for a sense of the questions, or if they can give you a list of the questions. If you do get the list of questions ahead of time, I would advise you to verbalize and rehearse out loud your answers and make sure they're not coming across as formal or stodgy. What I've seen some guests do, usually the ones who are interviewed by my clients, is they will, get the questions in email and then type back an answer. Now we've got two formal, very staid sounding things that sound like they should be words that you find in a corporation's annual report, and they get kind of boring. So I invite you to not be boring. Say things as you would every day, as if you were having a cup of coffee with a friend. This is how fireside chats should sound. The other thing, for those of you who are guests, that I'll advise you to do is plan your verbiage for when you might not know an answer, or maybe there's a Q&A or the moderator asks you a question that is not your field of expertise, or if they're asking about something that your business or organization does, you might not be the person in charge of it. So think about if you are asked a question where it's either not your job, something you don't know about, or you simply don't have the answer, rather than just saying, I don't know, you will probably want to respond with a phrase such as, you know what, at my organization, that is not my department, but I can point you to the part of our website where you can find that out. So just know how, if there is a question you want to say, I don't know, or that's not my job, how will you respond to that? Okay, and finally, as a good guest, thank your host. And also, if it was a really great time, feel free to send them a follow-up thank you email. All right, those are my tips for you. Fireside chats, moderators, interviewers, and guests. Get out there, have fun with your fireside chats, and happy speaking.